All right, you guys. We are on chapter 9. I'm going to turn off my ringer because it makes a sound every time. A Spot of Trouble, April 24th, 1944. Mom and June were thrilled with their latest letters from Dad, but Hobie's made him squirm. Dear Hobie, when I said you would need to be the man of the house while I was gone, I had no idea how much of a man you would need to be. Duke means so much to you. Loaning him to the war effort is one of the bravest things I've ever heard of. I know it's easy to think of bravery as something big and bold, but the kind of bravery you showed requires putting others before yourself. Not many people can be that kind of brave. This has to be short, duty calls, but I couldn't rest tonight until I let you know how proud I am of you. Tell Mom that Duke deserves his own service flag hanging in the window. I love you, son, Dad. Hobie put Dad's letter in his dresser drawer at the back behind his socks. Are you feeling okay? Mom asked at dinner. I thought chipped beef on toast was your favorite. Hobie spooned up a bite and put it in his mouth. The gravy tasted like glue, but it had nothing to do with Mom's cooking. He forced himself to swallow. I'm fine, he said, but he wasn't. Dad wouldn't be so proud of him if he knew about the letters to Private First Class Corf. That wasn't putting others first, that was being selfish, wanting Duke back. May I be excused? He asked. Mom frowned at his still full plate. No dessert, she said. I know. Hobie cleared his dishes, scraping the uneaten dinner into the garbage. I ate all my dinner, June said. So I get dessert, right, Mom? Hobie didn't wait to hear Mom's answer. He made his way down the hall to his room, where he grabbed a Green Lantern comic book from the desk. Dad wouldn't have known about the letters. He told himself that he lay on the bed flipping the pages. Besides, didn't Dad always say he would love Hobie no matter what he did? Hobie flopped over on his stomach. Dad would still love him all right, but would he be proud of him? He turned another page in the comic. Alan Scott, the Green Lantern, had just discovered he could be weakened by wood, and the bad guy was going after him with a wood club. It didn't look good for the Green Lantern, not even with his magic ring. If he had known about the weakness ahead of time, he could have prepared for it somehow. Maybe some kind of shield. What else that might work against the wood? Fire. So if the Green Lantern had a shield or a torch, the bad guy wouldn't be winning. That was why it was a good thing that he told Private First Class Corf about Duke, to make sure that the bad guys wouldn't have the advantage. The Marines needed to know about Duke's bad habit. It might mean life or death to some soldier. Hobie closed the comic book and got ready for bed, though he tried to concentrate on other things, like what to plant in the Victory Garden come summer, or Susie and the little girl, or even pickling pig's feet. Dad's words let the last things he thought of before he fell asleep. Can I carry the model? June poked her head in Hobie's bedroom bright and early the next morning. I helped, but it's mine. Hobie carefully put the B-24 in the old shoebox. When Mrs. Thornton had learned he'd been working on it, she'd ask him to bring it to school when it was finished. Now the black paint was completely dry. It was safe to take it in. You can carry something of mine, June persisted. June, let your brother alone, Mom called. Ugh, I'm allergic to something. Come here and I'll braid your hair. Hobie munched a bowl of Wheaties while Mom worked on June's hair. Mommy, did you know that this week's spelling words are just like us? June asked. Really? Mom wound a rubber band around the bottom of her first braid. June opened. Oops, sorry. Hold still. Mom rewound the rubber band around her hair. This week's list has mother, brother, sister. No father. June made a face as Mother tugged the second braid into shape. We have a father, Hobie said. Well, he's not here, said June. Just like father is not on my spelling list. She stuck her tongue out at Hobie. There you go. Mom patted the braid. All finished. She gave June a kiss on the forehead. Your dad is with you no matter what. She tapped June lightly on the chest, right here in your heart. I don't like it that both Dad and Duke are gone. June leaned into Mom for a hug. Do you? Life is full of things we don't like, Mom said. But what matters is your attitude. She gave June another hug. Would some icebox cookies help with your attitude? June's head bobbed up and down. I'll have some for you this afternoon. Mom gave June a pat on the rump. Now, you two better get going or you'll be late. When Hobie dropped June off at her classroom, she grabbed his arm. Dad's right here, she said, patting her chest. Right? June looked so small and worried about Hobie that Hobie was tempted to give her a hug, but not at school. He tugged one of her braids. Tell you what, I'll let you take a turn carrying the model home after school. How's that sound? Great. June skipped off into her classroom, and Hobie could hear her saying, Miriam, Miriam, guess what I get to do? When she saw the model, Mrs. Thornton acted like Hobie had invented the light bulb or something. Oh, this is wonderful, she said, admiring it from all angles. I'm sure your arithmetic can wait a few minutes. She pushed some papers aside on her desk. I know I'd love to hear Hobie tell us more about his project. She sat down, her face aglow with encouragement. Hobie scratched his arm. There's not much to tell. He scratched the back of his neck. All this attention was giving him a rash. My uncle brought me this model because it's kind of plain my dad flies, a B-24. The Liberator, Marty called out. He was a fiend for planes. Hobie nodded. Yeah, I mean, yes, Mrs. Thornton insisted on good grammar. The Army and the Navy and the Civil Defense use these models to train spotters, so they can pick out a plane from a mile off. That's so interesting, Mrs. Thornton clasped her hands together. And I'm going to donate this to the Army, he said, because of my dad. I'm sure he'll be very pleased to know that what you've done is quite remarkable. Mrs. Thornton patted Hobie on the shoulder. And now I'm certain you young citizens are eager to get to the quiz on long division. She stood up. Hobie, why don't you put your model on the back counter for safekeeping? Hobie did, and they moved on to the quiz. That was not as remarkable as the model. Mrs. Thornton seemed genuine about Hobie's 79%. Let's work together on a multiplication refresher, she'd written across the top. Hobie didn't know why he had to learn long division. Dad never used it on the Lily Bess. Neither did Uncle Trig or Mom. But it was important to Mrs. Thornton. She stayed in with him at recess to review his times tables. Hobie did okay until he got to his sevens. I have trouble with those too, says Mrs. Thornton. You do? She put her finger on her lips. This will be our secret, okay? Okay, Hobie felt a little better. Sometimes it's even hard to do the twos and threes, she said, thinking about Neil. She looked over at the photo on her desk, her husband in a uniform. Hobie erased one of his wrong answers. I miss my dad too. I want him to come home. He hoped he didn't sound too much of a baby. Me too, she patted the locket that was by her throat. I mean, your dad and my husband? Then she turned her red pencil over and over again. I want them all to come home. Hobie wasn't sure, but he thought he saw tears sparkling in her eyes. They say the war will be over soon. Mrs. Thornton's smile wobbled. I hope so. I certainly hope so. Hobie could hear his classmates in the cloakroom. Recess was over. I'll put these away. He picked up the flashcards. Hobie set them on the math shelf in the supply closet. As he closed the door, he saw Mitch bump against the spotter model. It crashed to the floor. The right wing sheared clean off. Hobie ran over. Did you do that on purpose? No, I didn't. Mitch held out his hands. Honest. Mrs. Thornton bustled to the back of the room. What's going on? Max picked up the plane. Before Hobie could say anything, Mitch jumped in. I accidentally bumped this off the counter. Hobie glared at him. Oh, how awful. Mrs. Thornton looked at Hobie. Can it be repaired? It's ruined. Hobie felt sick. He needed to go to the nurse. My grandfather might be able to fix it, Max offered. He's a woodworker. Mrs. Thornton nodded. Well, that's a wonderful suggestion. Hobie looked at Max, Pig's Feet grandfather, who looked a little like Santa Claus. How could he fix this? He waved his hands over the mess. You never know, Max said. Come over and see. Mrs. Thornton started back for her desk. Oh, Mitch, even though it was an accident, you still owe Hobie an apology. I'm sorry about your plane, Mitch said. Hobie accepted the apology. For Mrs. Thornton, how could he believe anything that came out of Mitch Mitchell's mouth? Hobie sat at the desk, sending the arrows at Mitch the rest of the day. Walk home with me, Max said, after the last bell rang. Grandfather can take a look at it. I have to take June home first, said Hobie. I'll come over after that. But not even the temptation of icebox cookies could keep June home when she learned what had happened. I don't see the harm in her going along, said Mom. Hobie couldn't believe it. It was like June was an anchor he had to carry everywhere. Mom, he said. She wasn't invited, just me. Scooter had 3 little sisters, and he never had to drag any of them anywhere. I helped build the model, June said. I should get to go too. She does have a point, Hobie. Mom hesitated. Just this once. After this, Hobie goes to Max's house on his own. Hobie groaned as if there would be another time after this. Why did he have to have a little sister anyway? Use your company manners, Mom said. She wrapped some icebox cookies in wax paper. And take these. She handed the package to June. Hobie walked as fast as he could to the Kleins. Still, June's little legs managed to keep up. She turned shy when they got to the house, though, ducking behind Hobie and Matt when Max answered the door. Some kind of orchestra music was playing on the record player in the background. This is my kid sister, June, Hobie said, and these are from my mom. Come on, Max took the package of the cookies. My grandfather's workshop is around here. He led the way to a small building in the backyard. Hobie felt a little shy, too, now that he was here at Max's house. It wasn't noisy like Scooter's, with all his sisters giggling and gabbing. Opa, Max called. My friends are here. Ja. Max's grandfather shuffled to the door of the shop. Kommt doch rein. Hobie stepped inside, June right on his heels. The shop smelled of pitch and shavings and licorice, familiar smells. A wooden work table ran the length of the far wall. Dozens of glass jars filled with nails and screws hung by their lids from the bottoms of 3 rows of shelves above the work table. The short walls of the shop were covered with pegboard from which hung an astonishing assortment of neatly arranged tools. Dad would have pronounced it shipshape. This is Hobie, and this is June, Max introduced them. And this is from their mom. He unwrapped the cookies and offered them around. Danke. Max's grandfather ate his cookie in 2 bites. Now, what is your trouble? He asked. Hobie felt better that his grandfather was speaking English, but it was confusing. Getting help from someone who was from Germany when Dad was over there fighting the Germans. Life could sure be complicated sometimes. Hobie pulled the 2 pieces of the model from the box. This, he said. Grandfather Klein brushed his hands off before taking the model from Hobie. Uh-huh. His spectacles slid down on his nose. This no problem. He slipped on a pair of safety goggles and drilled one hole in the body of the plane and matching the hole on the edge of the wing. Max, bring me some of the dowling over there. He pointed at a coffee can that looked like it was filled with different size arrows, without the points. Will this do? Max handed him a very thin piece. Gut. Grandfather Klein picked up a small saw and cut the dowel to size. After squeezing a bead of smelly glue on either end, he pushed the bit of the dowel into the hole he drilled in the body. Then he pushed the wing hole onto the protruding tip of the dowel. Like new, he handed the plane back to Hobie. That's amazing. It did look just as good as new. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Max's grandfather stepped over to the crescent coffee table, removed the lid, and held it out to Hobie and June. Hobie glanced over at Max. Max grinned. Don't worry. It's not, you know what. He made a soft oinking sound. Licorice, exclaimed June. Yum! She and Hobie each took a piece. Hobie sniffed his, salty, and as hard as a piece of dried bubblegum. Not soft, like the licorice he sometimes bought at Mrs. Lee's. You must come again, said Grandfather Klein. Max would like that. Ja? I would like that, Ja, said June. Hobie tapped her. He was talking to me, he said. June had a piece of licorice in her mouth, so she couldn't answer back. But Mr. Klein laughed at the expression on her face. As soon as they were outside, June spit out the licorice. I don't like that kind, she said, but I like Mr. Klein. He looks like Santa. Opa. She tried out the word. Opa Klein. And I like your friend Max, too. Hobie stopped for a second. His friend Max. Max. A friend. He tried that thought on for size. And he liked it. Maybe Max wasn't a drum major like Scooter, directing Hobie's life this way and that, but maybe there are different kinds of friends. Quieter kinds. They're both okay in my book, Hobie said. He whistled all the way home, carrying the model with care. Mail call, Mom sang out when they went in the front door. For Mr. Hobie Hanson. Hobie looked at the letter from her. It was from Private First Class Corf. He paused before opening it, mentally crossing his fingers. Had his plan worked? There was only one way to find out. Hobie took a deep breath and opened the envelope. Dear Hobie, we got our orders. I can't tell you what they are exactly, but I can tell you that my tail's wagging because we're headed to California. I hope to get to meet Lassie, your pal Duke. The letter ended with a P.S. You don't have to worry about a thing with Duke. He's the most disciplined dog in the unit. Even if we run into any squirrels where we're going, I don't think he'll pay them any mind. But it was good of you to be concerned. Semper Fi, Private First Class Marvin Korf. Hobie folded the letter back up. All the lightness of the afternoon had turned to lead. The only good news in the letter had been about California. That was about as far away from the war as you could get. At least Duke would be safe. All right, you guys, we'll get next one. Chapter